Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second Act Actors. I'm your host, Dr. Janet McMorty, and I'm still a medical doctor simultaneously trying to pursue a career in acting. My guest this week is Galen Howard. Galen is another character actor. I've had a couple on my show, and I find them very fascinating. People who have very unique looks to themselves and have embraced this. Galen has an incredible story and has had an incredible career so far, and it's just absolutely growing. He has been a part of two of my favorite universes. The Star Wars universe, he'll talk about this, and the Brooklyn Nine-Nine universe. I love that show. As soon as I saw that episode with Galen in it, he's been in multiple, I was like, This guy, he's so recognizable. He's got such a unique look and is just so embracing it, and his career is just taking off. Please enjoy the hilarious and incredibly talented Galen Howard. Tell me your story. How did you get into acting?
Yeah, I mean, I was, I grew up in Northern California and was always kind of an I would describe myself as just kind of a little socially awkward and kind of. One of those kids who was just constantly in his head, but had like a overactive imagination, and acting was just kind of a natural outlet. I was blessed with parents who were both artists and were able to think outside the box a little bit. So it was always kind of like, well, what do you enjoy to do? What do you enjoy doing? What's your sweet spot? What's your happy place? Let's just focus on that. And really kind of doing anything they could to encourage that. So, I think naturally I just kind of, I think started taking some local acting classes, those little theater camps and stuff like that, that kind of like babes in arms, like, hey gang, let's put on a show kind of thing. Over the summer, and then was doing plays in high school, and then out of college, I didn't take like the 4-year route as far as like going to like Juilliard or whatever. I thought for a long time that that's what you were supposed to do, and I certainly tried that. I basically just did I got all of my electives out of the way, and then just kept doing them again and again and again, and then while putting off all my academic requirements, and then just blew it off altogether to be in community theater and to be into write my own scripts and things like that. And I just, after a while, just realized, hey, like maybe that just isn't the way to go. So, I did that, and then just continued, acting in kind of the Northern California, Sacramento area. Did did a handful of short films and features and things on very low scale, but a lot of. It allowed me to get a lot of time in front of the camera, and so that was a great experience. And then about back in 2010, I moved down to Los Angeles, and and from there it was that's been a whole journey unto itself. But from there it's just been just kind of constantly just learning how early on just learning how the business works there, and then over time just building slowly building relationships, building credits, and it just takes longer than you want it to, but over time I've been very fortunate to get a lot get a lot of memorable enjoyable work. So
a lot of people I chat with who are like second act actors, as I'm calling them, like myself, who a lot of us did do the summer stock, the theater camps, the high school musicals and everything, and then we were either told or kind of subconsciously told by someone or something in society that going to be an actor is not the reasonable or logical, sensible choice. And we're kind of actively discouraged into going into doing that. Where it sounds like you were the opposite. Did you ever feel pressure from anywhere or anyone to say, like, excuse me, Galen, like, you want to be an actor? Okay. Good luck.
I mean, again, thankfully, I mean, I think where most people get the pressure is from family, discouragement, and again, thankfully, I did not have that. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have that support. I mean, because for me, like, I would try to do other things. I would, again, I tried to, I thought at some point, maybe, the idea of like, oh, maybe I'll, maybe I'll go into teaching or something, get my degree, go from there. And I was just so miserable in that, in the restrictions of that, of that track. It just drove me insane. It's just not how my brain works. And, so there's certainly people where, you get the idea of like, oh, well, you can always come back. You can always do something else. Oh, you got to have a backup, whatever. And it's like, I just couldn't do that. I think I certainly gave it thought, but it was always like, I don't know what a backup would be. I mean, I feel like anytime, even if I was just doing a part-time job or something like that, I was just, it was a disaster. And so I just, after a while, it's just like, well, I'm not going to be, you just have to make pieces like, well, certain people have certain ideas, and I'm just not going to make those people happy. And I just have to, make myself happy in the best way I know how to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, for a lot of people, like, I like what you said there, it took time, longer than we all want it to kind of build
of course
relationships.
To build relationships, and I think, I think they always say, like, in LA, it's, it takes like 3 times to, of seeing someone for them to really, to permanently get in their, into their Rolodex, into their, it kind of permanently dialed in, because, and because I've had, as someone who's always trying to, build relationships and eager to meet people, like, I'm at the point where, I'll meet people, and, within a week, I just, I'm lucky to to be on a set and remember the names of 2 people. It's just because you're constantly inundated with new faces, new names, and it's impossible. So to put yourself in the place of any executive who's or anyone in anyone in any place of authority, casting, producer, director, they're seeing hundreds of faces a week, and it's like how can they possibly retain any of that? So it's so generally it takes a while to kind of get in the get in the memory bank of anyone, and and to just constantly to just build those relationships. Those things take time. And, I think it does take longer than it takes. I think a lot of people, will kind of fool themselves in thinking like, oh, I'll give it a couple years and see what happens. And it's like, realistically, I think most people will tell you that you have to give it at least 5 to really, be prepared to give it about 5 years before you see any return. You may be lucky. You may be, you may be more fortunate. But generally, before you get, start to see any consistent turnover. I mean, I was fortunate. I knew some people in town, and when I got here, and I was able to get a few jobs here and there. In my first few years, I would have maybe one or two kind of cool jobs that I can write home about a year, and then from whether it's a movie or a web thing or something like that, and then from there it's it can be very hit and miss, and so it takes a while to really get the right agents and build the right relationships that you're just kind of naturally just coming to people's minds.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more about that. Like, how was the build for you over time since you moved to LA in 2010? Like, that can be like really discouraging for anyone. Not like, people who don't have the experience going to theater school and like and stuff like that. But also, like, just for, like, a human to, like, have to be rejected all the time in this industry. How did that build for you go? And what did you do? What did you find that was successful when it was discouraging?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just, it's like any kind of experience. You just have to develop a thick skin, and sometimes that just means you toughen up the skin by beating up against it, and so sometimes you just have to be you have to face the beating of those rejections until they don't hurt as much, and I think there's really no other way to do it. I think, I would, when I first started getting, bigger auditions, more impactful auditions, on TV shows and whatever, and that idea of like, this could be, quote unquote, the game changer, or this could change things or whatever for me, whatever, have that kind of experience. You build that up in your head, and you kind of think like, oh my God, if I don't get this job, my life is over. And then you don't get the job, and your life isn't over. And you go through that enough, and that you just realize, okay, I guess. And then eventually you do get something. You will you'll get a job, and then eventually you'll get another job, and you just kind of. You build it up to the point that you can remember, like, okay, yes, like, sometimes this works in my favor. Most of the time it doesn't. And that's the other thing, is that the odds are just always stacked against you. And it, I think if you were to book, one out of, 20 auditions, I think those are really good odds. That's a really good ratio. And so there's a lot of so by and large you're getting rejected, at any level. You're getting rejected far more than you're being hired. And and then the other thing is that the odds of even getting an audition are insane. I mean, I think these days it's about you can, they can easily get, 1,500 to 2,000 submissions per role, and then bring in maybe 15, 20 people. And so your odds of so if you are even getting an audition, you're among the lucky ones.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's tough. It's just, and, you just kind of get used to it, and you just, you don't, you learn to kind of temper your expectations and your excitement level. You don't, you might get a call back or get on hold, and then you're just like, you get closer and closer, and your excitement level rises. And then, if you let yourself get too excited, then, if you don't get the job, then it's just a huge, drop down. And so generally, you keep your, you focus on the work, you keep your expectations low, but still just, I think the main, the key for me is enjoying the work. And and that's like I think the hardest thing to remember. I think when we're spending most of our time auditioning and not actually on set, it's hard to remember that, oh, this is the this is our favorite, this is my favorite thing to do. This is, and sometimes, when you're not actually, when all you're doing is just saying lines to a disembodied voice in your bedroom, it can be hard to kind of tap into the joy of the experience. And I think any way that you can do that and just kind of cleanse your palate, and just anything that can remind you of why we love this is just, I think is so key, because it can be very easy to kind of get into burnout phases, or to just to just kind of resent the process, but when you're in when you're often getting so few returns, is just really appreciating and protecting the process.
Yeah, and I think there's a big thing with with expectations of what people think a career in acting is, and I think we put that on ourselves, even though we know, I know the audition is, the odds are stacked against me and blah blah, but there's still this deep down little voice saying, but the expectation for a career in acting is to be doing acting. And so when the expectations aren't met, that's when you get the resentment, right? And you start to even resent when you get an audition, it pops up and you're like, oh, great.
And sometimes, it's hard to have because things are so, things are so inconsistent. Things are, things don't, it doesn't behave like a normal job. And, I even remember, a while back, I was, had a stressful few months, and, had plane tickets booked to go back home. And then the day later, I got a job offer, just out of the blue, a job offer. And literally my first thought was, oh shit. And it was 5 days of work, and it was something people would kill for, and but you're so, it can be so stressful of just adjusting everything, and and then of course, you set that aside, and it's oh, okay, oh yeah, that's right, this is great, thank you, universe. But you can have that moment of just really, and it's just, and that's just how it is, and it's. And that's just what we sign up for. And sometimes any job we love is frustrating. Even when it's great. Yeah.
What do you find you love most about acting? What drew you to this? Why do you keep at it? What do you love about it? Why is there nothing else?
I think for me, because I'm a constant, I loved telling stories as a kid. I loved that. I love that kind of avenue of expression. I loved the way that I could express myself in that kind of structured format, was so freeing for me. I think I was someone who kind of, in many ways, struggled to find my voice, and a way to be heard, among my peers and among others. And I think having that outlet to express myself, and and in a structure that people are listening to you, and what you're saying and doing has impact, I think is incredibly empowering and enabling. And I think also, what I really love about acting is the way that it allows us to kind of take our own personal experience and take the most painful parts of our personal experience and turn it into something beautiful, and that and how you know, especially, you know, as a character actor, you know, you know, where you're playing so many kind of crazy characters and you know, unseeming characters and, you know, that sort of thing is that, you know, I think this goes for, I think, any actor who's really going deep in their work, is just that the parts of ourselves that we find the most unattractive, the most unappealing, the most kind of, you know, damaged or ugly, you know, are often you know, our greatest assets as an actor. And I think that's an incredibly empowering and freeing experience.
Tell me more about what it's like being a character actor, and how did you become that? Like, was that a discovery of what your niche was?
Yeah.
How does one become a character actor?
I think it's just, you know, again, I had the experience of all, you know, people constantly saying, like, you're weird, you're quirky, you know, blah, blah, blah. And you kind of get, you kind of get that kind of foisted on you. And you know, and that was certainly how I experienced things. I always experienced being, you know, the odd person out, a little different, you know, kind of seeing the world differently. And I think that that gives me kind of access to kind of, you know, offbeat characters and, you know, playing, you know, kind of, playing kind of odd characters. I think that just, you know, my mind just immediately goes there. It's, you know, I have those, I can easily access those kinds of idiosyncrasies and that sort of thing. And I think, I think even when I was younger, and, you know, I think, you know, I think the look that I had at the time was was a little more general, wasn't as specific. You know, I think as I aged, you know, I would find that, you know, kind of, as like growing out my mustache, growing out my hair a bit, and, you know, ways that would kind of distinguish my character one way or another, distinguish my appearance, you know, really started, really started triggering things for people. Like, oh, the mustache is great. Like, oh, now I see you in all of these different characters. Whereas before, where it's just, you know, kind of clean cut kid, it's like, oh, well, yeah, you're a little different, but you could kind of be anybody. And, you know, then when I kind of added a little bit, it was like, oh, well, there's all these other kind of characters people can see you in, you know. And I think, and that's, you know, that's the other part, is just being very specific, because I think, when casting directors are again dealing with, you know, 1,000 submissions, you know, they don't have time to use their imagination. They don't have time to look at someone's picture and be like, oh, or video and be like, oh, well, maybe if they did change this and this, I could see them in this. They just simply don't have time or headspace for that. So you have to spoon feed all of that to them, you know, because they don't have time to do that themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point. Yeah, they can't. They could extrapolate if they needed to, but like you said, they don't have the time.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's, you know, people. Yeah, I think people, you know, I think that's an important distinction, because a lot of people will say, like, oh, casting directors have no imagination. It's like, no, they do. They just don't have time to use it. They're literally they have 8 hours to line up auditions for 10 different parts. You know, going from 5,000 submissions or more. You know, and there's no way that they can that they can just, you know, spend 2 minutes kind of, you know, mulling it over with every actor. It's like, it's just, you know, no, maybe, no, yes, no, maybe, and that's all they have time for.
Yeah. So make it easy for them.
You have to.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to. You have to just make it easy for them. you know.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any favorite characters you've gotten to portray?
Oh, sure. I mean, one of my one of the first films I did out here was a feature film written by one of my close friends, Ryan Finnerty, who's a great comedy writer and has also written a lot for horror and other genres. He's just an incredibly versatile and gifted, imaginative writer, and he wrote this. He wrote a feature that was kind of in the found footage genre, kind of found footage adjacent to found footage thriller, set in like a Jim Jones / Manson kind of religious suicide cult, and called a film called Children of Sorrow. Really intense film. It came out on Lionsgate, and so I played kind of one of the acolytes, parishioners, in that, and just kind of following these like very damaged people who are kind of just been slowly churned through the mill in this cult, and it's and it's really creepy. It has some just really really creepy, really kind of accurate moments of that whole cult mentality, and I think that, I mean, the whole theme about cults is I think something that's really become part of our zeitgeist and is really continues to be something that we're all fascinated with, with everyone talking about anything from like the anything that captures a cult mentality, from like NXIVM to LuLaRoe, is people are fascinated with that, and
You're
so
speaking my language. I have listened to all those podcasts.
Me too. I've watched the watched all that stuff. Yeah, listened to all the podcasts, all the series. Yeah, no, I'm obsessed with that. So that really kind of that really kind of got me thinking about cult, about the cult mentality and everything like that. So, and then playing just this incredibly kind of damaged, emotionally stunted character who's just kind of a victim of this construct was just great. It was just kind of I was able to kind of, I think, bring a lot of myself to that kind of character, and you really that was a character I really fell in love with. Another and then more recently, kind of in some ways kind of playing on that theme. I think I find myself playing kind of these sort of and often playing kind of characters who are a little naive, emotionally stunted, almost kind of man-children characters, and kind of easily led kind of characters, and that was kind of keeping on those themes, but in a much softer, lighter context. Was a film that came out just earlier this year called Moon Manor, which is just a beautiful film about about an older man coming coming to terms with his mortality in kind of the last days of his life, and or the last day of his life, and is someone who's decided to, instead of mourning his the last days of his life, and instead chooses to celebrate it, and it's a beautiful film, and this about so as we follow this character who has chosen to in a very beautiful way end his own life on his own terms. He's then experiences all these different characters who are responding to in their own way, and one of them is his brother, who is a church parishioner and is protesting the his decision, and has then roped in one of the other parishioners, kind of an acolyte, kind of easily led character, and that's the guy I play, who then kind of slowly begins to realize his his mentor's ulterior motives, and kind of begins to have a little bit of a change perspective, and being able to play a character like that, who's so accepting and loving, but then kind of has this this kind of changed viewpoint, kind of has this this kind of arc towards the end, is that was a lot of fun, especially to where a role in a film where the primary storylines are just so powerful, and that there was room for this other this kind of B story with this character was just really fun, and then just had the opportunity to work with just some incredible actors like Lou Taylor Pucci, Deborah Wilson from Mad TV, Richard Reilly from Office Space, and countless other films and television shows. So yeah, that was those two are high on my list for sure.
I do have to ask, and I know you probably get asked this all the time.
Sure.
But my partner would kill me if I didn't ask you about your experiences on two of his favorite universes, Star Wars and Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that. What was that like? What incredible thing.
Oh yeah, no, great experience. Yeah. Yeah. Well. Well, Star Wars, Book of Boba Fett came about during the pandemic. We shot that just as production was coming back in 2020. So I think I shot that December, just like right before the holiday, and that was incredible. It was what's remarkable about it is just how kind of easily and uneventfully it all came together. I think I was sent the sides, and it was I had auditioned with that office before, and for actually another universe, the Marvel on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'd booked with them before, and so I think. My understanding is they weren't posting those roles publicly for Star Wars. Because it's so under wraps. Anything that would indicate what it might be, they just can't. They can't do that. So they were very hush hush about all of that. And they wouldn't. They were so secretive about it that they wouldn't even. They wanted to have as few parties involved as possible, so they wouldn't even. Usually, they'll send the sides to your agent, and then they'll send the sides to you. They didn't even want to include the agent. They would just send them to the actor directly, just to have as few copies of it out there as possible. And so I received that. I think I knew that office was casting it was beginning to cast the Star Wars series, and it had I think it did indicate somewhere like untitled, like Disney Plus, or Disney/Lucasfilm. So you can kind of deduce what it might be from that, But funny enough, I didn't. This was before the Boba Fett show was officially announced to anyone, so I wasn't sure if it was Mandalorian or if it was something else, because especially because Boba Fett and Fennec Shand had made an appearance in Mandalorian that last season, so it could have been continuing with their characters. In fact, it was that was they were setting them up for their own series, but who knows? So you never know when you're with that. So I just I think I did I did a couple takes of that scene. I have really only one primary scene with lines in the second episode, and then that was and then I think I was they checked the veil the next week, and then a couple days later was had the offer, and it all came together just very simply. There was there were very few hoops to jump through, and but yeah, the experience was incredible. I mean, they were filming on the volume in Manhattan Beach, the digital the digital sets, which are it's just an incredible experience. It's just like you feel like you're thousands of years in the future with both technology, and then both literally in the setting itself that they're creating. So it's it's incredible. The cast was amazing. It's it was even just playing a minor character, you already feel like you're part of that universe, and it was an amazing experience.
That's awesome. That's so great.
No, it was very cool. Everyone was you're just around these iconic characters, iconic actors, being directed and advised by Jon Favreau and Robert Rodriguez. I mean, it's amazing. Even if you're only seeing the top half of their face,
yeah. That's so neat.
Yeah, no, and everyone was still kind of adjusting to that. I think, I think instead of in lieu of shaking hands, Jon Favreau was bowing to everyone. Which, I think only Jon Favreau could get away with that. It somehow worked for him. Yeah,
it made sense.
Made sense. So that works. Yeah, that works. Yeah, but it was fantastic. My favorite story I heard is working on the volume, because the sets are all the backgrounds are digitally projected, and it takes a moment to kind of realize, like, oh, that's this is real in the foreground, everything over there is fake. And one of the crew members told me that at one point one of the COVID officers almost approached one of the digital actors to put on their mask.
That's how you know.
That's how you know they're doing their job. That's how you know it's working. That's how you know it's working.
God.
That's how you know it's working.
I have a funny story about that, because in Toronto they filmed Star Trek, and so we have one of those volumes now. They brought the same tech from Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett to Toronto.
That's awesome.
And I did some medical consulting on the show and got to be in the volume. And
nice.
one of the directors said a very similar story about, there was a background actor who walked smack into the screen, thinking they could keep just going down this road.
I mean, if you're not, because especially, because for a lot of the background, they get brought onto set, moments before the shot. Yeah. So they don't, so for me and others, you get a moment to acclimate and kind of see where the horizons are. So you're not doing like a Wile E. Coyote, walking into the train tunnel,
Exactly. It's an incredible piece of technology. Wow.
Insane. It's insane.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I remember looking over the shoulder of two of the guys who were running the digital stuff, just because I was so fascinated, and I was like, this is just insane. There's no other word to describe it. It was it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
What
Yeah.
Experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yes. What were you going to say?
I was going to ask you if you have any advice for anyone who is interested in pursuing a career in acting or thinking about switching career.
Oh man. Yeah, I think it's I think it's I wish there was I wish I had clear-cut advice, because I think the reality is just it's going to be a little different for everyone, and I think the big when you're first starting out, I think it's the biggest thing to do is to just is to do as much as you can, and then just kind of and then kind of figure out from there what works for you. And I think it's if you've just constantly try to experience as much of it as you can. I think some people can fall into doing like background work and that sort of thing. I think if you're first starting out, I think if you've never been on a big studio set, I think that's a great thing to do doing background is a great way to get that experience, as long as you're clear that that's what you're there for, is to just experience, to learn what it's like to be on a big studio set, to get experience being on the different studio lots, that sort of thing, to just kind of learn, know your way around a set and get that experience. That's it's a great way to do it. I think, when I first came to LA, I was aware that, the level of education that was available to me in Northern California wasn't like that in Southern California. So I was, I was taking acting classes down there. I was just doing anything I could to just, keep immersed, 100% of the time. And I think that's the big thing, is like when you're first starting out, is just, immerse yourself as much as you can in classes, in, going to events, going to screenings, doing whatever you can to just, to breathe in as much as you can, to learn as much as you can. And then it's, you, over time, a lot of that becomes natural. You then, you can then kind of build on that, and and some of that is more, it just comes more naturally. But in those first years, you have a great opportunity to just just completely immerse yourself. And I think I don't think there's any other way to do it.
That's great advice. Is there anything you're looking forward to coming up?
Let's see. I just shot a film that was a small part in a film that was just announced. It's an kind of anthology, genre mashup film called "Give Me an A," and it's from the producer and filmmaker Natasha Halevi Gunn, who's one of the primary producers and filmmakers behind it. But it's a film that's brought together about I think about 20 different female filmmakers, and it's all in response to the Roe v. Wade overturn, and using different using different genres, different styles, and they've had a number of incredible actors come on board, like Sean Gunn, Virginia Madsen, Alyssa Milano, Milena Vantrub, so it's just, a lot of people have lent their time to this incredible project, and so that'll be coming out early next year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any final words of wisdom?
Oh my goodness.
I know, right? No pressure.
Who knows?
What a ridiculous thing to say.
I don't know. I think, again, for me, it's like this is the only thing this is the only thing I love to do, and I think if there was something else if there was something else that brought me joy, if there was something else that I felt like I could excel in, I probably would have done that instead. And I think that's, for me, there's really no other choice. And I think that's the way that you're in the right profession. So you just don't have a choice. I mean, I think some people have the fortune of being able to choose, and are multi-talented in that way and can make that decision for themselves. And for me, I just didn't have another option. So I think I think if there are many things you enjoy doing, I think you might consider doing those instead of acting, because I think you have to love acting more than anything, and just because of the amount the amount of challenge that's involved, I think. And that's the thing. You have to have a reason to justify the amount of challenge that's involved. And I think if you're just thinking, well, this might be fun too, then I mean, just why put yourself through that amount of pain if you don't have to? That's my thought in the matter. And not to say how incredible the experience can be, but it's you have to be able to you have to have that fortitude to put yourself through that amount of suffering, and if you're doing something else that's just as fulfilling, then great. I think you're one of the lucky ones, but otherwise, you just have to find ways to make it enjoyable for yourself. And so that's, and if there's a point at which, it's no longer fun, then I think there's really, I know many people who have switched out of acting, have done something else, have chosen to focus on their families, other things, and I think that's incredibly noble. And if it's no longer fulfilling, if you found that it's that you had a great run and then it's no longer bringing you joy, and there's something else, and you find there's something else that is, I think that's great, and I think there's absolutely no shame in honoring that. Just as I know you're talking about, second act actors. I think, there are a lot of first act actors that have had a second act somewhere else. And I think that's just as valid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think we so often get pigeonholed into what we're I remember being told, I didn't even realize growing up that you could maybe even switch jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that was such a a thing that just permeated my brain.
Yeah.
That's exactly. If it's not bringing you joy, I think honestly it sounds like a little bit woohoo, but life is too short.
Yes.
If it's not bringing you joy, to make a change. Yeah.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I know a lot of people who have stepped away from it. Some have stepped away from it just for a year or two, and and have just stopped the chase, and then let things kind of taken care of themselves, and letting things kind of fall together as they will, and I think have been better for it. And I think it's there's so much pressure in this business, and I think it's I think the big thing is just really listening to yourself and taking care of yourself in that. And if you need to take a break, I think then you honor that. And if you find yourself being more drawn to something else, you don't owe it to anyone. No, there's I think no one asked us to be an actor, and no one is telling us that we have to do one thing or another. I mean, we chose this for ourselves, and if we at some point we want to choose something else, I think then that's up to us, and if that's what we need, then we honor that.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you, Galen, for being my guest this week. I so appreciated you taking time out of your busy schedule. Guys, go follow him on social media. He is doing such cool stuff with his life, with his career. He's doing teaching, he's doing outreach, and he's just a fascinating human being. Also, go check out his, guest spot on Brooklyn Nine-Nine and in the Star Wars universe. Go do it! Oh, incredible guy. Thank you, Galen. I hope you will all tune in next week for another episode of Second Act Actors. Bye.